He stood at the edge of the vineyard his father planted, pointed to the excavators and said, "Grapes don't pay like golf, Mother. It's just business." He thought he was just uprooting vines. He didn't know he was about to unleash a harvest of consequences. I tended those vines for 40 years. My hands knew every twist and scar on them. They were our story, written in root and leaf. My husband, Thomas, was a botanist, a man of science and soul. He believed this land was special. He called the soil hallowed ground. The rootstock was an heirloom, passed down through his family for a century, a varietal so unique it had no official name. Thomas just called it Veritas, the truth vine. We didn't have much money back then, but we had this land, this dream. While other families took vacations, we took to the fields, our hands stained with dirt and grape juice. When our son David was born, we brought him home from the hospital, and our first stop was the vineyard. Thomas took a drop of wine from our first bottling and touched it to his lips. "So you never forget where you come from," he whispered. When Thomas died, his last words to me weren't about love or us. He was too weak for that. He just gripped my hand, looked towards the window that faced the hills, and said, "Protect the vines, Eleanora. They are our heart." I tried. I did. But I had another heart to protect, my son's. I saw his ambition, his hunger for a life bigger than the one we had, and I fed it. I paid for his education at the best private schools. I funded his first failed business, a ridiculous import-export scheme. I co-signed on the home he bought in the city, the one he never thanked me for. He took and I gave. I didn't mind. A mother provides. That is her function. I never imagined he would see my life's work not as a legacy, but as a barrier to his next payday. The excuses started a year ago. The yield is down, Mother. The taxes on this land are crippling. The market is shifting. He brought developers to the house, men with slick-back hair and blueprints that smelled of money and disrespect. They talked about fairways and clubhouses. They saw our heritage and grew a price per square foot calculation over it. I said no. I told him it was his father's dying wish. I told him it was sacred. He looked at me as if I was a foolish, sentimental old woman. He didn't argue. He just changed tactics. He came to me with papers, talking about estate planning, about securing the land for his own children one day. He said it was just a formality, transferring control into a trust that he would manage. "To protect it, Mother," he said, and like a fool, I believed him. Because I wanted to. Because believing my son was a good man was the last luxury I thought I had left. Watching the steel claws of the excavator tear through the soil, I felt the final thread of hope snap. He stood there, arms crossed, with that developer by his side, a king surveying his new, profitable territory. He saw acres of dirt. I saw his father's soul being flayed from the earth. The gnarled trunks of the Veritas vines, some of them older than I was, were ripped out and tossed aside like weeds. The sound of splintering wood and snapping roots was a physical agony. He wasn't just uprooting vines. He was digging up his father's bones. He was burying me alive under a mountain of progress and profit. He didn't know his father was more than a romantic. He was a brilliant scientist. And years ago, in a dusty patent office, my husband had left behind a time bomb, hidden not in a will, but in the very DNA of the vines themselves. A patent, a trap, waiting for the one person greedy enough to awaken it. His son. As I watched the first Veritas vine torn from the soil, its ancient roots clawing at the air, I made a promise to my husband and to myself. David would learn the true meaning of harvest, and what he would reap would be a bitter, bitter vintage. That night, in a cheap motel room that smelled of stale cigarettes and defeat, I unpacked the one small bag I had managed to grab. It contained little more than a change of clothes and Thomas's old botany journal. I almost didn't bring it. It felt too heavy, another relic of a life that was now just mud and splinters. I opened it, the cracked leather soft beneath my fingers. I expected the pages to bring only pain, but as I turned the familiar, brittle sheets filled with this precise, elegant handwriting, I wasn't looking for solace. I was looking for a weapon. For hours I read, not his notes on soil acidity or pruning techniques, but his entries from the late 90s. An obsession had taken hold of him then. He was convinced the Veritas vine was a genetic anomaly, something nature had created by accident and would never repeat. He spent months in his makeshift lab, mapping its DNA, documenting its unique resistance to blight, its strange, deep purple fruit. Then I found it. The entry from a sweltering Tuesday in August. Took Eleonora to the city today. She thinks I'm a sentimental fool registering a plant patent. But this isn't about sentiment. This is about legacy. You don't put your heart in a vault. You give it armor. Patent number US 9875432B2. The Veritas is protected. I remembered that day. I had been so impatient, sitting on a hard bench in a sterile government building, waiting for him to file papers I didn't understand. I had dismissed it as another of his academic eccentricities, but it wasn't eccentricity. It was foresight. It was a time-delayed fuse he had lit 20 years ago. My husband had given his heart armor. And my son, in his greed, had just tried to shatter it against a bulldozer. The next morning, I was no longer a grieving widow. I was an executor. The first call was to the United States Patent and Trademark Office. I read the number from Thomas's journal, my voice steady, asking for a status verification. Active and in good standing, ma'am, the clerk on the other end said. An exceptionally robust patent, I might add, very specific genetic markers. The second call was to the law firm that had handled the original patent filing. The original attorney was long retired, but a brisk young associate named Miss Albright listened to my story with increasing interest. She asked, "They are destroying the patented organism on land they technically control for commercial development." A predatory excitement in her voice. "And this developer plans to build a golf course? Do you have any idea how much turf they plan to install?" I told her I had a copy of their publicly filed development plan. "Madam," she said after a moment of furious typing, "the potential for statutory damages here is, well, it's astronomical." My third call was not to David. It was not to the developer. It was to the CEO of Agrogen, the largest agricultural biotechnology firm in the country. Thomas had consulted for them briefly in his later years. "I am calling to report a potential infringement on an exclusive botanical patent. It concerns the unlicensed destruction and potential propagation of the rootstock for a varietal known as Veritas." I gave them the patent number and the developer's name. The silence on the other end was profound. Then a lawyer from their IP division came on the line. He asked me to repeat the details. I did. He thanked me and said their legal team would be in touch with the developer's counsel immediately.
I hung up the phone. The trap was armed. The beauty of Thomas's plan, I realized, was that I didn't have to be the villain. I wasn't suing my son. A multi-billion-dollar corporation was about to sue his business partner, the developer, for intellectual property theft on a massive scale. David had sold them acres of land. He didn't know he'd also sold them a declaration of war he had no power to win. He had made a deal with the developer, but he had broken his father's covenant with the land. And the land, through the cold, unescapable logic of the law, was about to collect its debt. All I had to do now was wait for the screams to begin, for the phone calls not of dismissal, but of pure, unadulterated panic.
The first tremor hit a week later. It wasn't a call from David. It was an article in the business section of the local paper. Luxury golf course development halted amidst aggressive patent infringement lawsuit. The article detailed Agrogen's claim against the developer, citing brazen intellectual property theft of a genetically unique, high-value botanical asset. It mentioned the patent number. It quoted Agrogen's lawyer describing the potential damages as financially cataclysmic. David must have read it, because his panicked voicemail came an hour later. "Mother, what is this? What have you done? The developer is threatening to sue me for misrepresentation. He says I sold him cursed land. Call me back." I did not call him back. I let the silence stretch. I let him marinate in the consequences he had orchestrated. The developer, a man who saw honor as a liability, did exactly what I predicted. He cut David loose. His lawyers argued that David had sold the property under false pretenses, failing to disclose the existence of a highly restrictive botanical patent that made their development plans impossible. They rescinded the deal and sued him not just for the return of their deposit, but for millions in damages for breach of contract. The dominoes fell with breathtaking speed. With the developer's lawsuit made public, the bank that had financed David's deal immediately called his loan, demanding full repayment within 30 days. The 3 million euros from the land sale was frozen, caught in a legal web. But the debt remained. The lawsuits remained. He was a man standing on a financial cliff, and the ground beneath his feet had just turned to sand. Bankruptcy was his only option, but it wouldn't save him from the public disgrace, or from me. He came to me a month later, not to the motel, but to the small rented cottage I had taken near the edge of the ruined vineyard. He was thinner, his expensive suit replaced with rumpled clothes, his arrogant confidence replaced with the hollow-eyed look of a man who is stared into the abyss. He didn't knock. He just stood in the doorway, rain soaking his shoulders. "You did this," he whispered. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. "No, David," I correct him softly. "You did this. You took your father's legacy, his heart, and you sold it for a parking lot for rich men's cars. Did you really think there wouldn't be a price? Did you think he hadn't built defenses around the one thing he treasured most?" He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "You're ruined. They're going to take everything. The house, the cars. My life is over." "Not over," I said, my voice calm, the final pieces of my plan clinking into place. "I can make this go away. I can speak to Agrogen. As the patent holder's widow, I can negotiate a settlement. I can assume your debts to the bank, to the developer." Tears of relief streamed down his face. "Oh, Mother, I knew you wouldn't let this happen." "Oh, I will let it happen," I said, and my voice was no longer soft. It was the sound of iron. "I will take on your debt, all of it, the 30 million in penalties and damages.
But in return, I will own you. You will work for me on this land to pay it back. You will work from sunrise to sunset. You will break up the developer's concrete with your own hands. You will amend this poisoned soil. You will replant by hand every single Veritas vine you allowed them to destroy. You will work for the rest of your life to rebuild what you so casually annihilated. Your alternative is prison and a lifetime of disgrace. The choice, as always, is yours. That was a year ago. Now I sit on this porch and watch him. He works the land under the watch of the foreman I hired. He is lean and hard now, his soft hands calloused and cracked. He is rebuilding the legacy he tried to erase. Yesterday he planted the 500th Veritas sapling. It will be years before they bear fruit. He will be an old man before his debt is paid. They say forgiveness is a virtue, but sometimes justice is a higher calling. He looks up and our eyes meet across the field. He doesn't see a mother. He sees his creditor. And I see a project. A long, slow restoration of a family's heart, one broken vine at a time. Never let them tell you your life's work is worthless. Sometimes it's the most valuable weapon you have. Tell me in the comments, what is the one thing you've built that no one can ever take from you?